It's Morbin time! Hi everyone, it's me, and today it's Morbin time with the movie Morbius together.
I can't believe I was the only person in the theater. Sony heard us.
Yeah.
They wanted more, and they gave us more. Or should I say Morb?
More.
You, sir, are you going to hashtag sweep into the next showing? They re-released Morbius because they knew it was and will always be Morbin.
Dude, please stop saying Morbin time. Meme's dead. Look.
It's very cringe. Come on, this part 2?
Yeah, it's dead.
Like, that wasn't even funny.
It's pretty bad.
Wanna get bagels?
Okay.
Sure, film theory. Thank you.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, the
Hello Internet, welcome to Film Theory. Hi.
show that loves to sink its teeth into some juicy lore. Well, theorists, I don't know about you, but I've been to the movies a lot in the past couple months. It's almost like there was a 2-year backlog of big movies that were just waiting to roll out.
Yep, with the 2020 and 2021 global pandemic period, so yeah.
Doctor Strange, Batman, Top Gun, Sonic, but few have risen to the heights of Morbius, the movie that truly brought cinema back from the brink. Audiences, critics, even Martin Scorsese loved it. It made $7 billion at the box office, and pretty much everyone left theaters excited for Morbius 2.
I just love it. I just mentioned 200%. 100. That's just not feasible, right? Right?
The Empire bites back. Honestly, it's just shocking
The Empire bites back. Empire.
that Sony decided to hang on to this masterpiece for over 2 years. The first trailer hit in January of 2020. How could they justify delaying this world-altering work of art for so long?
How confident are you that the coronavirus came from bats?
Probably 90% confident.
Oh, yeah, that would do it. Okay,
Yep, super coincidental.
so for understandable reasons, Sony delayed Morbius. And then when they finally did release it, the movie was painfully mediocre. Let's fight somewhere empty. Cut to Morbius Theater. And when
Cut to Morbius Theater.
the memes making fun of this thing made it the most talked about movie in the world, Hollywood, not understanding internet sarcasm, re-released it into theaters. And it was then, and only then, that Morbius finally did become the best at something, bombing at the box office, doing it not just once, but twice. Anyway,
Yep. So make a guess, alright? Imagine the pitch meeting for it. It's like, okay, so, what if no one watched it twice? I'm joking. It's a joke. I'm sorry.
Wait, it wasn't for any lack of trying. The trailer for this thing was everywhere. Sony clearly used the same marketing strategy that they used for the first Venom, creating an air of mystery as to if and how this film connected to the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. Except this time, it was dialed up to 11. For Venom, Sony producer Amy Pascal just said that,
Well, those movies will all take place in the world that we are now creating for Peter Parker.
So there is a chance that Tom Holland will pop up somewhere over there.
just watch Kevin Feige's face in this thing slowly dying from the inside, knowing none of this is real. Anyway, for Morbius, marketing really dialed up, hyping up the connections to Spider-Man, Venom, and the MCU. They even straight up name drop Venom in what is clearly the funniest joke ever put to celluloid.
I am Venom.
And I am Groot. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding. It's Dr. Michael Morbius at your service.
Kidding.
Hi, Dr. Michael Morbius.
He's Michael Morbius, but he's pretending to. Oh, he's not Eddie Brock. Oh, it's so funny. And that's not all either.
So
we
cringe.
also see a poster of Spider-Man labeled a murderer, clearly referencing the cliffhanger from Far From Home, except this isn't Tom Holland's web head, it's actually the Tobey Maguire costume from the PlayStation video game. Then
Yep, they mess up pretty badly.
there's a building with the Oscorp logo from Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man, with another shot focusing on the Maguire version of the Daily Bugle newspaper. Not only that, but two of the Bugle's headlines here tease the villains Rhino and Black Cat. Most obviously though, Michael Keaton pops up as Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture from Homecoming, further teasing a direct connection to Tom Holland's version of the Wall Crawler.
What's up, Doc?
Honestly, all of this left theorists like me wondering how they were gonna connect all these dots. But if you went into Morbius expecting any answers about the Easter eggs, too bad! Most of them aren't in the movie. No Spidey poster, no Oscorp, no Osborns. And all those hints and cameos might as well not have been in there either. The Daily
Oh my god, wait, serious?
Bugle newspaper was just a throwaway prop. Morbius's Venom joke strangely had its punchline cut, but not the reference to Venom. Most bafflingly, the Vulture's scenes from the trailer aren't in the movie. Instead, we get a different pair of intriguing post-credit scenes where Vulture spontaneously materializes in the Morbiverse and meets up with Jared Leto in a way that doesn't even follow the rules set up by the MCU.
Hope the food's better in this joint.
I'm not sure how I got here. Has to do with Spider-Man, I think.
Now, Morbius is hardly the first movie to have altered scenes for the trailer. Marvel Studios is actually infamous for doing things exactly like this. They've altered shots of everything from Thor Ragnarok to Spider-Man No Way Home to Avengers Infinity War to hide spoilers. They've even fabricated shots that didn't appear in their movies, like this shot of Hulk running alongside the Avengers from Infinity War. But I think the difference here is that these shots were altered to hide major plot points. Sony, meanwhile, these were fundamentally manufactured scenes purely meant to build hype off of nothing. And if you were there specifically to see what came of the Easter eggs in the trailers, well, it's entirely fair that you could feel lied to. And a lot of—
So, case in point, I am sorry. My deepest apologies for you. I'm sorry.
people here on YouTube, they were very vocal about feeling lied to.
The thing that generated the most hype for this movie at the end of the day is people going like, which universe does this take place in? It is manipulative.
Let's put—
oh my gosh, the rejects, they're awesome.
Like a Spider-Man poster in the background or something, and then we put that in the trailer, but it's not gonna make sense in the movie. Well, we don't have to put it in the movie. It kind of feels like false advertising. Yeah, let's do some of that.
Honestly, it kind of borders on false
oh my gosh, Captain Midnight.
advertising.
Basically, it had people asking,
so why'd you do it? I can't answer that.
And seeing all this discussion got me thinking, was the movie actually falsely advertised? Did Morbius break the law? Did they play a little too fast and loose with the trailers and misrepresent what was in the movie? And most importantly of all, could Sony be sued for that? So grab your blood bags and take a big ol' slurp, loyal theorists. Today we're about to find out. Also, just as a friendly reminder, none of this is meant to be actual legal advice. I'm kinda like this guy from Morbius.
I don't remember you ever finishing law school.
Because I didn't.
So first, let's talk about what exactly false advertising is. How is it legally defined? Like all laws, it varies from place to place. In the United States, advertising is regulated nationwide by the Federal Trade Commission, or the FTC, who prohibit, quote, unfair or deceptive acts or practices in or affecting commerce. False advertisement is, fittingly enough, exactly what it says on the tin. You can't run ads that outright lie and trick consumers into thinking your product is something that it isn't, or does something that it isn't meant to do. Makes sense, right? So let's break down the legalese piece by piece to see what applies to Morbius, shall we? Let's start with deceptive practices. Legally speaking, these are defined using 3 points: showing your product in a way that misleads the consumer's interpretation is reasonable, and the misleading information is withheld until the consumer has already made their purchase. If you want a clear-cut example of this, in 1996, Hasbro had to pay the FTC a fine of $280,000 because they used air-compressed paint guns to film this commercial for their Color Blaster toy instead of using the actual toy, which in—
and case in point, I just realized that I'm very old. 2000, that's right, 1996 is 26 years ago. Man, I feel old. Huh.
Turn created a deceptive representation of what the toy actually did. Now, this one seems like it might have some legs to stand on against Morbius, right? I mean, if you look at the trailers, it'd be pretty hard to argue that they're not deceptive. A representation that misleads? Check. The trailer has a vandalized Spider-Man poster directly implying a link to the events from Far From Home. And
Among Us. Sus! I'm sorry.
Then the poster isn't present in the final product. Reasonable consumer interpretation? Check again. It's in the trailer, so it's reasonable to expect it to wind up in the final movie. Misleading information withheld until after purchase? Check one final time. You aren't gonna know these connections were cut or changed until after you buy a ticket to see the movie. So that is 3 for 3 across the board, which means that the studio execs should probably be shaking in their boots, right? Well, what about the other half of the legal definition? Unfair practices is also defined by 3 key points. It's an act which can hurt consumers, it cannot be reasonably avoided, and it's not outweighed by any of the other benefits provided by the product or its competition. Again, if you'd like a clear-cut example of this, in 2019, the FTC sued Match.com for unfair practices. Match had notified—
2019, which is 3 years ago. Oh my gosh, before the global pandemic period. Man, I miss those days.
their users that they'd caught the eye of a potential suitor, but many of the likes and messages that they used originated from accounts that they knew were likely fraudulent. This led to almost 500,000 people paying for subscriptions to see those likes and messages, and those subscriptions were often difficult to cancel. Basically, the FTC alleged that Match used the scammers on its site, which could be as high as 25 to 30% of their accounts, as marketing to sell subscriptions. It was unfair, it was hurtful, and there was no real benefit gained to the consumers. But how would any of this apply to Morbius? Well, it's a good question. This one's actually a bit more ambiguous than deceptive practices, so let's go through point by point.
So case in point, Matt Pets just bring up a good question. Food for thoughts, indeed. Food for thought.
Morbius hurt consumers. Legally, probably not, but sitting through that thing was pretty painful. Could you have reasonably avoided the deceptive Morbius trailers? Maybe. It's possible that you could have gone into Morbius blind, but Sony also spent a lot of money running their trailers on TV, in front of other movies, during YouTube videos for over 2 years. If you were watching pretty much any piece of pop culture since 2019, you likely saw this trailer, so for this criteria, I'd say probably guilty. Finally, did Morbius cause substantial injury to consumers without providing benefit? Again, it's a tricky question. You might have been lied to about the contents of the movie, but you still wound up with a movie. That is some level of benefit provided by the product. As for the level of harm, sure, at face value it's like a $10 ticket, but what if someone took a day off of work or hired a babysitter? Do those things qualify as substantial injury? Well, you might be surprised to hear that the answer could be yes. In 2014, the FTC settled a lawsuit with Red Bull after they were sued for falsely advertising that their drink could provide performance-enhancing benefits when there were no scientific studies to back that fact up. They were required to provide anyone who bought their product within a certain time range with either a $10 reimbursement or $15 in credit for other Red Bull products. So it's not like the FTC isn't willing to go after products that are relatively cheap, like say movie tickets. So, while definitely not as clear-cut as deceptive practices, seems like a case could also be made that Morbius engaged in unfair practices as well. In total, that winds up being about 4 to 5 points out of a possible 6 against Morbius. So I asked the question again, did Sony falsely advertise this movie? Well, there's certainly a lot of gray area. There is a very good argument that you could make that they did. But is it enough to get the studio in trouble? Could you sue Sony over the trailers for Morbius? And again,
Matt Pat makes a very good point as well. Is it enough?
I stress, this is not legal advice, but yes, technically you could do that. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves, you can sue practically anyone over anything. The problem with doing that is just you're gonna lose a lot of those cases. But in the case of suing movie companies for movie trailers, you wouldn't be the first. In fact, a case is actually working its way through the court system right now. In January of this year, 2022, two men filed a class action lawsuit against Universal Pictures alleging that they'd both rented the film yesterday based on the brief appearance of actress Ana de Armas in the trailer. However, she wasn't actually in the movie, so now the men are seeking $5 million in damages. Wow. Just to make this clear, de Armas appeared for like 13 seconds in one of yesterday's trailers, and now they want $5 million. Now, while de Armas did film scenes for yesterday, the subplot with her role was ultimately cut out of the finished film very late in the production process to help focus the story. Given the recency of this case, it's yet to be resolved, so sadly, we don't know if any precedent set by this case would affect things here, but even these guys weren't the first to bring forward this sort of lawsuit. In 2011, a woman sued the studio film district over the Ryan Gosling movie Drive, which she alleged was promoted as being similar to the Fast and Furious franchise. Basically, she thought the trailers made it look like a high-speed action driving film. However, the woman walked away from Drive thinking that it was neither fast nor furious enough, instead focusing primarily on slow-paced interpersonal drama. So there you have it, friends. There is legal precedent for suing movie companies over what you perceive to be a misleading trailer. So is it Morbin time to call a lawyer? Well, probably not. And not because you'd be wrong, but rather because it's probably not worth your time. First of all, because there's such a little precedent here, we have no idea how the FTC would rule regarding Morbius. According to the California-based Spencer law firm, there's already an expectation that footage in a trailer may or may not make it into a film because they're made so long before the final cut is solidified. They argue that it's not necessarily the job of a trailer to show exactly what's going to be in the movie, but rather the tone and feel of the movie. That's an argument that the FTC might find persuasive. Additionally, what little legal precedent there is for suing movie studios over their trailers wouldn't exactly be on your side. That woman who sued the studio behind Drive? Well, if you've ever watched Drive, you'll know that the woman isn't wrong about what the movie is. Drive isn't devoid of action, but it is very slow. And yet the case got dragged out in one form or another until 2018, when every judge presiding over it concluded that Drive did accurately advertise the amount of violence, action, and drama in the film. Now, that lawsuit was focused on the movie's tone rather than any misleading content removed from the trailers, so there may be more of a leg to stand on here to sue Morbius, but perhaps the biggest question of all is whether the FTC would care in the first place. You see, last year on our sister location Game Theory, we covered the onslaught of misleading and false advertisements in the mobile gaming space, where we saw that the FTC tends to look especially closely at advertising claims that affect consumers' health and their pocketbooks. We basically concluded that, while yes, these games were falsely advertised, the FTC has far bigger fish to fry. For Morbius, maybe you spent 15 or 20 bucks on the ticket. That lawsuit against Match.com, meanwhile, some of those unfairly advertised subscriptions were costing people hundreds of dollars. As for that Color Blaster toy we mentioned, sure, the toy itself wasn't super expensive, but the FTC is especially concerned with advertisements aimed at kids. They require that these sorts of commercials aimed at children have clear delineation between what the toy can really do versus the fantasy of the advertisement. Meanwhile, advertisements aimed at adults or older kids like the PG-13 audience of Morbius, well, the FTC doesn't seem to think that companies need to treat their consumers like idiots, and they've thrown out several cases based on the idea that reasonable consumers should be able to figure some of this stuff out. Like here, is this all butter loaf cake misleading because it wasn't made entirely from butter? Well, no, according to the FTC. People should know better, especially when all the ingredients are also listed on the packaging. Instead, they tend to focus on bigger falsehoods, like Volkswagen claiming that their diesel cars are environmentally friendly. In that case, the FTC required Volkswagen to pay up to $14.7 billion in buybacks, lease terminations, and vehicle modifications for affected customers. If the FTC were to find Sony guilty and force them to do similar refunds for Morbius, a movie that bombed at the box office twice in less than 2 months, it would be for about 1% of what they mandated for Volkswagen. And even then, it's entirely possible that the FTC would settle with Sony for an amount far lower than the $73 million the movie made in the US and Canada. The case that the FTC brought against Red Bull, for example, that one was settled for a total of just $13 million, and that was supposed to account for anyone in America that bought a Red Bull in the 12-year period between 2002 and 2014. And even then, actually getting the money back might not even happen. Just this year, in March of 2022, a judge ruled that Match.com didn't have to pay $844 million of what the FTC sought in their lawsuit against them because of a legal loophole. They reasoned that Match.com was only publishing the misleading third-party content instead of actually generating it themselves. Now, obviously, none of the cases we've talked about here line up one-to-one with Morbius, even the lawsuits about movie trailers. The specifics of how a suit against Morbius would go down, how much money Sony would have to refund even if they were found guilty in the first place, are all up in the air. We just don't know because there isn't that much legal precedent for this sort of a case. But the point here is that this thing would be a labyrinthine legal nightmare, and that's before you even attempt to educate an elderly judge about the multiversal implications of Spider-Man No Way Home. Can you imagine? I'd like to present to the court the following piece of evidence. Spider-Man killing Mysterio. But he doesn't really kill Mysterio, it was actually caused by illusion drones, but everyone thinks he killed Mysterio, which is why everyone calls him a murderer and why those posters in the trailer for Morbius matter so much. And that's also why Doctor Strange opens up the multiverse to erase everyone's memories, which is how you get that Venom joke and also why Vulture are there, but it's not actually following the official MCU rules, and I went into this movie expecting it to be the official MCU rules. Clearly, you see why I was misled. I rest my case, and I rest my theory. My film theory. And cut.
I just love it that at the end of the video, right, my pet is just like, can you imagine the process? And then he just went through the process. It's like, okay, so there are illusion, drones, multiverse, Spider-Man, all these powers, it's like, Mysterio? I just love it that MadPat just put a very entertaining, fun, enjoyable, just creative twist to the entire video at the end of the video, of a very serious topic. So thank you, MadPat, and thank you all so much for watching this video. If you do like this video, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to my channel, and comment down below if you have any share of us. Down below. Don't forget to follow my channel, and I hope to see you in my next video. But hey, that is just a theory, a game, film. Is it a film theory? Sorry. But hey, that's just a theory, a film theory. Thanks for watching. Thank you. I hope to see you all in my next video. Bye! Subscribe! Thank you.